Does Jon Jones not want to fight, or does Jon Jones just not want to fight Tom Aspinall?
Listen, Jon Jones has been an interesting human being to deal with since the day he got here. But I will say this about him. You would never hear me out, talking about he's the GOAT and he's the this and he's the that if Jon Jones didn't want to fight people. Jon Jones has never, ever said, I'm afraid to fight this guy, or I don't like this fight for me, or any of that stuff.
Dana White seems set to move past Jon Jones and name a new heavyweight champion if he keeps avoiding Tom Aspinall.
For instance, he doesn't fight this guy. Who would you like to see him fight? Or are you going to wait until he fights this guy?
I don't know. We'll see how this thing plays out over the next couple weeks. But yeah, if we can't get this fight done, we'll move on quickly.
Dana has made it clear if the heavyweight title unification bout between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall that doesn't materialize soon, the UFC is prepared to move forward without it. With a firm timeline set, White stressed that fans won't be left hanging for long. According to the UFC president, the fight must be locked in within the next couple of weeks, or the organization will pivot to other options. The message is loud and clear. The clock is ticking on Jon Jones.
Obviously, this Jon Jones thing is what a lot of people are talking about. I wonder, is there anything that PFL or Francis could do to make that a realistic option for you guys, or are you fully focused on Aspinall?
Yeah, it's Aspinall's fight. I mean, we've been talking to this kid forever about it, and it's his fight. Listen, you can't make people fight. If Jon doesn't want to fight, you can't make him fight. We can try to make him fight. We can throw things at him that inspire him to want to fight, but we'll figure it out.
White has acknowledged that working with Jon Jones over the years has been challenging, calling him a complex personality. Still, the UFC president stood by Jones. When it came to accusations of avoiding fights, according to White, Jones has never backed down from a matchup out of fear. He recalled the incident in 2012 when Jones's team declined a short-notice replacement bout against Chael Sonnen, which led to the cancellation of UFC 151, however. White emphasized that the decision was strategic, not fear-based. He insists that Jones has always been willing to face any opponent the UFC has put in front of him.
That's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of what we do. How will Topuria do at 55? And the thing is here, you get thrown right to the wolves. You're going in against Charles Oliveira, one of the best, one of the most popular fighters in the UFC. I don't know the answer to that question, but we're going to find out.
Questions continue to circulate over the delay in finalizing a matchup between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. Jones last competed in the Octagon back in November, securing a dominant win over former two-time champion Stipe Miocic at UFC 309. Since then, he's been spotted in Thailand, reportedly involved with a Russian adaptation of The Ultimate Fighter. Rumors suggest that the holdup might stem less from scheduling issues and more from contract negotiations or even possible retirement considerations. Meanwhile, Tom Aspinall has stayed active and laser-focused on the heavyweight scene. In July 2024, he made a statement by defending his interim title in dominant fashion, stopping Curtis Blaydes in under a minute, a rare feat for an interim champion. Prior to that, he claimed the interim belt with a knockout win over Sergey Pavlovich in November 2023. Now, the Wigan-born powerhouse is eager to challenge for the undisputed title, and the fan base is rallying behind him. A petition calling for Jon Jones to be stripped of the championship has nearly hit 200,000 signatures, reflecting the growing frustration with the ongoing delay.
Did you see the petition online from the fans?
Every human on earth was DMing it to me, and yeah, I saw it.
Just curious what you make of that.
How many fans are there worldwide? It's like 400 million, 130,000 people want to see him stripped. It's kind of silly.
He said he doesn't care if you strip it, but he would vacate it.
I've been busy. I haven't been keeping up with the gossip. Crazy.
Interestingly, Jon Jones hasn't shown much public excitement about a potential matchup with Tom Aspinall, while Dana White claims the champ initially agreed to the fight. That agreement hasn't translated into an official contract or announcement. In the meantime, Aspinall continues to train and stay prepared, but he remains stuck in uncertainty as he waits for Jones to fully commit to a unification bout. Aspinall has even suggested that Jones may already be retired, and he's now shifting focus toward a possible showdown with second-ranked Cyril Gane for the undisputed title, if the Jones fight doesn't happen.
This is the only sport in the world you can have somebody hold your career back.
Yep. I've been almost a year inactive. with no prospects of anything. Just be ready, and we'll just let you know.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of difficult, like, mentally to...
Oh, yeah.
This is the fight against Jon Jones. Like, not... The fight is another thing.
Yeah.
This is the tricky bit where I really have to stay switched on, stay motivated, and I'm trying my best. I'm trying. It's tough. As you said a minute ago, no one really knows what's going on behind the scenes apart from me.
Exactly. You're an office cooking.
I train all the time anyway. Just because I've not got to fight doesn't mean I don't train. Like, I honestly...
Jon Jones has faced growing backlash from both fans and fellow fighters, with many questioning his hesitation to face Tom Aspinall. Some believe money is the driving factor behind the delay. According to insiders, including Aspinall's teammate Phil DeFries, there's a strong sense that Jones is clinging to the heavyweight belt mainly for the status and paychecks it provides. DeFries suggests that Jones might not be genuinely interested in squaring off against a British contender and could be stalling just to maintain his champion status. He even theorized that if Aspinall were to suffer a loss to another fighter, Jones would be far more willing to fight that opponent just because it wouldn't be Aspinall.
So we've got to speak about Tom because from my, I've been covering MMA for years. I've been watching it since before I was a teenager. I can't remember seeing anything quite like this Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones saga. What are you making of it?
I don't think it's going to happen, I don't think Tom wants it. I don't think Jon wants anything to do with it. I think Jon gets a lot of money for being champion. I think the sponsors and that are paying him a fortune, and I think he's just dragging along, keeping the belt as long as possible because it's worth that much money to him. But I don't think he's got any intention of doing the fight at all. I think he's just going to drag it on as long as he can until he gets flipped. You never know, he might come back. I mean, I'm reckon he would if Tom did get beat, he would jump for joy and he'd fight the guy who beat him. But Tom's not going to get beat, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think so. I think it's just not happening at all. But you never know. But I think it was going to happen. Jon would have said yes by now, and he's just partying in Thailand, isn't he?
Chael Sonnen, a former UFC title challenger who once shared the octagon with Jon Jones, has shared his own perspective on the situation. He believes Jones doesn't need to face Tom Aspinall to secure his legacy. According to Sonnen, Jones's dominant first-round victory over Cyril Gane at UFC 285 already solidifies his greatness. He adds that if Aspinall and Gane eventually face off and their fight lasts longer than a round, it would only enhance how impressive Jones's performance truly was without him ever having to step back into the cage.
Daniel Cormier comes out, said if Jon Jones leaves right now, he does not retire, he quits. If Jon Jones does not make that walk against Aspinall, does it call into question Jon's career and everything that he's achieved? Because the one great out that Jon has, if this little game of chicken plays out and he doesn't compete with Aspinall, yes, the media is going to be terrible, and yes, they're going to bury him. And this little thing called legacy is not going to go in your direction unless Tom and Cyril see round 2. If Aspinall and Cyril fight and Aspinall beats him, but it's in the second round, Jon only needed a couple of minutes and never even got punched in the face. Tom Aspinall is going to have to beat 4 minutes and 31 seconds. And if he doesn't, Jon Jones, without lifting a finger, is going to get that legacy and get that reputation.
However, not everyone agrees with that point of view. Brian Stann, a respected former UFC fighter and military veteran who once trained with Jon Jones at Jackson Wink, offered a more balanced take. Stan shared that if he were in Jones's shoes, he would accept the fight against Tom Aspinall while acknowledging that Jones is financially secure and doesn't need the payday. Stan believes that even a loss to a younger, rising star like Aspinall wouldn't tarnish Jones's legacy. In his view, Jones is already regarded by many as the greatest of all time, and one setback wouldn't change that. Still, Stan sees a real possibility that Jones could win the match, though he remains uncertain if the fight will ever come to fruition.
Your old teammate, there aren't a ton of them left, but there is one named Jon Jones who is still around. If you were him, what do? Do you take this last fight against Tom, or do you get out of the game with the perfect record?
I think if I'm him, I take the fight, but that's easy for me to say because I'm not. I have no idea what's going on in his personal life. And I knew him when he was very young. And one thing that always stood out to me is he was always very responsible with his money. He saved his money, which is not something a lot of fighters do. So he's probably in a really good financial position. But until I see him actually lose a fight, right? I think it's very hard to bet against him, even against somebody as young and as hungry as Tom Aspinall. But as we know in this sport, everybody has their time. But I don't think anything changes his legacy in terms of being the best, ever to do this, regardless of the outcome of that fight. But when I see those two athletes, you could absolutely see a path to victory for Jon Jones, and one where he could be standing there again looking at all of us and laughing at any one of us who doubted him, because he's just that good. And I think the thing that makes him most unique, having fought on a couple of fight cards for him, is even guys as great as George St. Pierre, the level of anxiety GSP would get before he made that walk was insurmountable, to the point where he didn't really like it. There were times when Cowboy Cerrone would say he absolutely hated fighting. He just loved the training. When you see Jon Jones in a locker room before he's fighting, right, he looks like a kid who's getting ready to play a middle school basketball game. Like, he's genuinely excited to walk out there in the octagon and destroy the person in front of him. There's never a single doubt in his mind as to what he's going to do in there. I've never seen another fighter mentally like that. In all the times that I fought and all the times that I called fights, never seen somebody with that level of mentality and that little anxiety before they walked into the octagon.
Flyweight champion Alexander Pantoja also shared his thoughts on the ongoing situation. Expressing frustration with how things have played out, he compared his own consistent activity inside the octagon with Jon Jones' seeming reluctance to unify the heavyweight title. Pantoja said, "Jon Jones is a legendary fighter, people admire him, but what's happening now is unfortunate. Maybe it's time to move on. Tom Aspinall has earned this opportunity, and fans deserve to see that fight. If Jon isn't interested in competing, maybe it's time for him to step away. No one will judge him for retiring, but there should be clarity. I just hope Aspinall keeps training and doesn't let this delay derail his momentum." What's added fuel to the fire is Jones's silence or minimal engagement on the matter. Despite claims that he's discussed his plans with the UFC, Dana White confirmed there's been little progress in finalizing the Aspinall bout. As the weeks drag on, more voices in the MMA community are suggesting that Jones is either holding now for a bigger payday or has mentally moved on from the fight game altogether.
When are you fighting Tom?
I was waiting for it. When are you fighting Tom, like, governor? The UFC, and Tom, we all got a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. They're one of the biggest organizations in sports, and right now Tom and I have agreed to wait for the UFC to make their announcements. So I legally can't really talk about it.
Alex Volkanovski didn't hold back when speaking about Jon Jones' current position as the UFC heavyweight champion. The featherweight star voiced his disappointment over what he sees as Jones' lack of interest in defending the belt against interim champ Tom Aspinall, known for his own consistent title defenses. Volkanovski stressed that being a champion means staying active and facing worthy challenges. With Aspinall clearly next in line, Volkanovski suggested that if Jones isn't prepared to step up, then perhaps it's time for him to consider retirement. His remarks reflect a broader frustration within the MMA world, as more fighters and fans question why Jones continues to stay out of action while Aspinall remains ready to unify the titles.
I've always been, if you're the champion, defend your belt. It's a responsibility. You can't just, I'm going to sit out. I think you need to be reasonably active. I think you need to fight whoever's there. If you've got an interim champ, it's a no-brainer. You know what I mean? So I don't want to throw heaps of shade, but I mean, look, I know he's proved himself. Everyone's like, oh, look what he's done. It's fine. It's like, yeah, no, not really. Don't hold up division just because, I know your resume's incredible. What you've done is incredible. You're considered the greatest of all time. Yeah, we get that. So if you don't want to fight, just retire. You're done. Or if you want big fights, you're going to have to vacate the title. Like it's a responsibility. That's how I've always looked at being the champ. It's a responsibility.
Curtis Blades, who's personally experienced Tom Aspinall's power in the cage, didn't hold back when sharing his thoughts on the situation. Blades expressed serious doubt that a Jones versus Aspinall matchup will ever happen, suggesting that the fight might be off the table entirely, while he stopped short of outright accusing Jon Jones of ducking. Blades did cast doubt on the significance of Jones's recent heavyweight victories. He pointed out that Jones beat Cyril Gane, a fighter often criticized for lacking strong grappling skills, and Stipe Miocic, who had been inactive for years. According to Blades, those wins don't necessarily prove that Jones has defeated the best the heavyweight division has to offer at their peak.
I was actually going to ask you after, but I think at this point, what's the excuse? Like at this point now,
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying,
I have no idea. Like, I'm not going to be disrespectful and say he's scared. He can't be scared. I have no idea.
I just don't think, and I think that I said this the first time I brought this up, I don't think the reward is worth the risk, I think, on his end. It doesn't mean you're scared, but it's like he's had this great legacy, and I think he feels as though him beating Tom wouldn't add that much more to his legacy. And I think he's trying to get away with the fact, this is what I'm thinking he's thinking. I'm thinking he thinks that he can convince people that beating Stipe was more meaningful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's wrong, but you're right. He probably doesn't think that, but if he were honest with himself, like, he hasn't beaten a real heavyweight, like a real prime heavyweight. You beat who he's got obvious holes in the grappling, and then you beat up old Stipe, who was rusty and who did have you. He had you, like, there were moments in that fight where Stipe, a younger Stipe, maybe takes advantage of those times he had him. I think if Jon were to beat Tom, we would all be like, okay, he legitimately is the GOAT. He legitimately won the heavyweight title. It would just, I think it would help him. I think it would help him more than, even if he lost. Because, bro, we get it. You're old. You're not a real heavyweight. We get it. You can lose. It's okay.
Looking at things from a different perspective, Rashad Evans joined the conversation with a more reflective approach, drawing from his own experiences in the sport. Evans suggested that Jon Jones's current actions may not stem from fear or reluctance, but rather from a desire to carefully protect his legacy. According to Evans, the mental and emotional pressure of maintaining a legendary reputation can weigh heavily on a fighter. He believes Jones might be taking his time, not out of avoidance, but to thoughtfully consider the long-term impact of each decision, especially with a rising threat like Tom Aspinall closing in.
All right, last thing. Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall, who you got?
I got Jon Jones. I think Tom Aspinall is a man, but I feel like, Jon Jones is just another level. He can do it in so many different ways with his striking, with his grappling, and I feel like, being in a situation, coming in a fight where he's kind of being pushed into this point, I feel.
Tom's a big boy.
Yeah, but I feel like with Jon's a big boy too, and Jon knows how to fight like a big boy. Right. One thing I feel like what Tom does really well is he moves so well, and I feel like that may give Jon a little bit of trouble, but I feel like Jon is smart enough to figure it out.
Georges St. Pierre also offered his insight, bringing a thoughtful viewpoint shaped by years at the pinnacle of MMA, while expressing deep respect for Jon Jones and his legacy as one of the sport's greatest detectives. St. Pierre emphasized the inevitable challenge that time presents us when facing a dangerous contender like Tom Aspinall, whose youth, speed, and power make him a serious threat. Still, St. Pierre didn't rule out the possibility of Jones stepping up once again, suggesting that greatness often shines brightest when it's doubted the most.
Ever lives, talk about, if I have to choose someone in his prime that I put in the Coliseum hand to hand, I think I would be Jon Jones. It's hard to deny that. However, nobody beats time, and Tom Aspinall is on a hell of a run now. So it's to see how they get a match. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. As a fan, I want to see this fight. I would like to see this fight, but I think Tom is very hungry, and it's up to Jon to see if he still wants to do this and if the UFC can compensate him good, because I think he deserves it. So it's going to be a hell of a fight.
In MMA, legacies are defined by moments of courage when fighters embrace the challenge, take bold risks, and silence all doubt. Jon Jones has delivered many of those defining moments throughout his legendary run, but this latest chapter is still unwritten. Whether he eventually agrees to face Tom Aspinall or not, the questions surrounding his future won't fade. In fact, the longer he stays on the sidelines, the louder the criticism grows. With the UFC nearing a decision point, all attention is on Jones. Will he rise to defend his heavyweight title against the interim champ, or will the organization move forward without him? Whatever path he chooses, one thing is certain: the clock is ticking, and the heavyweight division along with its fans deserves clarity.